Welcome to SlickRidez Garage. This time on SlickRidez Garage, I bought this 1997 Ford F150 in December of 2014. The V6 engine was partially disassembled with a yard sale of parts inside the cab. I'm hoping to make this my shop truck, but after what the seller told me, I'm expecting the worst. Apparently, the truck had been losing coolant and running warm for some time before suddenly losing oil pressure. He pulled over and stopped the engine within 30 seconds, only restarting it to drive it on and off a trailer. Also, the truck was running poorly, hard to start cold, and idled too fast. After trying to fix the engine with limited tools, the seller gave up, and that's how I bought it. So after arriving at SlickRidez Garage, I removed the engine, put it on a stand, removed the timing cover, and found the camshaft synchronizer had seized. This stripped the driven gear and damaged the teeth on the drive gear. Since the camshaft synchronizer drives the oil pump, it also stopped turning. This caused the sudden loss of oil pressure. Often the chirp 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 of a failing camshaft synchronizer is misdiagnosed as a squeaky serpentine belt or bad idler pulley. Next, I found the head gasket blown in two places along with rust in the water jacket. It looks like their solution for coolant loss was just add water. This tag on the engine block says it was remanufactured for Ford in 2001. The early 4.2 V6 intake gaskets are known to fail and allow coolant into the combustion chamber. This can cause the engine to hydrolock and bend connecting rods if the engine is forced over in this state. The color here tells me coolant was entering the air intake stream, while this port appears to have remained sealed. The intake also shows coolant was bypassing the gasket. After loss of oil pressure, I thought the internals would be trashed, but they're in really decent shape. Good enough that one might be tempted to clean and reinstall them after machining the heads, honing the cylinders, and a re-ring on the pistons. Even with a perfectly assembled engine, the early 4.2s were known for repeated failures due to design problems. I found every one of them on this factory rebuilt engine. In the auto industry, we call this pattern failure. Basically, a pattern failure is when a mass-manufactured item has components that fail often and repeatedly. As a general rule, a manufacturer improves the failing components to resolve the problem, and all mass-manufactured items are subject to pattern failures. This engine's Achilles heel was mainly gaskets and the camshaft synchronizer. Ford redesigned the problem gaskets in early 1997, but significant improvements didn't happen until 2001. Unfortunately, the direct interchange on my engine is 1997 to mid-1998. Direct interchange means an engine can be removed from one vehicle and installed into another in a mostly plug-and-play fashion. Since the early engine still uses similar style gaskets, they'll be subject to the same pattern failures after the repair. So with this in mind, I'm going to set some build goals. For my needs, it's a must to resolve all pattern failures and install an engine capable of going 10 years reliably. I also want the engine's electronic control system and components working right. Lastly, I don't want to spend any more than $1,500. Although the engine is factory rebuilt, needs minimal machine work, and the parts are available locally, the block and heads need extensive cleaning to remove rust, and the only parts available are still subject to the original types of pattern failure. The final nail comes when I find the cost of parts will exceed the budget. With all that's going against this project, one might be inclined to call time of death and send her to the salvage yard. But here at SlickRidez Garage, we're capable of advanced life support, and transplants are our specialty. Although the direct interchange is limited, the 4.2-liter V6 has been around since the late 1970s. After battling years of black eyes and pattern failures, the 2005 Ford F150 4.2-liter V6 earned the title of most reliable truck ever built. Since changes to the block are expensive, Ford saved money by leaving the block alone when possible and improving the design of bolt-on items like heads, intake, and exhaust manifolds. In part, it's changes to these bolt-ons that determine the direct interchange. Now the question is, are the blocks similar enough I can take advantage of these later improvements? Using a 2005 to 2008 series engine in my truck looks like it would help me accomplish my build goals. The only way to answer that is with some research. After a look online, it appears the changes may be insignificant. Although the part numbers differ, the main features of the block appear mostly unchanged. A little more digging and it appears most of the engine's internal components are the same from 1997 to 2008. So I went to carpart.com and searched for a 2005 to 2008 model year engine. I found one just down the road at 160 Salvage in Nixa, Missouri. Now that I've taken some pictures for comparison, I'll take some time to evaluate the engine's condition. The oil fill cap, tube, and oil dipstick are clean. Excess buildup or rust towards the top can indicate poor maintenance or engine problems. So can excess oil in the intake and exhaust system. The minor seepage from the gaskets isn't a concern for me since they're being replaced as part of the swap. This engine checks out great, so now it's back to SlickRidez Garage for some comparison. And some good news. It looks like the changes to the engine are minimal, and I think I can work with them. Even better, the timing cover and everything inside it, including the camshaft synchronizer and even the harmonic balancer, are the same as my 1997, and that will save me $250 on this build. I do have some concerns though. The intake system is entirely different, so I wonder how adaptable the 1997 intake will be. Taking apart the replacement engine makes it mine, so after some risk assessment, I decided to move forward with the swap. So after unloading a very reasonable $500 for the engine, I unloaded it at SlickRidez Garage and started strong by cleaning it with my extreme detail process. This helps keep contaminants out of the engine during disassembly. I'll also extreme detail under the hood and clean the items I plan to swap to the 2005 engine. Finally, it's wrench time. I'll start by removing the plenum and intake, and that's where I discover my first problem. In 2001, Ford revised the coolant crossover design, making room for an improved gasket. The early gasket has only one seal between the intake and coolant crossover ports and was one of its design flaws. The revised 2001 gasket has independent seals for both ports. For this to happen, Ford decreased the coolant passage size to increase the surface sealing area. This makes my 1997 intake incompatible. Except for the seal thickness, the 2005 intake gasket is identical to the 2001. Unfortunately, the 2005 intake is also incompatible with my 1997. I'm feeling a little bummed, but I'm not giving up. After more research, I learned the main difference in the 1997 and 2001 to 2004 intakes are coolant crossover port size, screw in plugs where I need coolant sensors, and an electronic intake manifold runner control, or IMRC system. So I took a trip to Buddy's U-Pull in Brookline, Missouri, and removed the 2001 F150 intake for inspection. This series of manifold turned out to be the key. The 2001 manifold allows the 1997 intake plenum to bolt to the top, while the smaller coolant crossover port will adapt perfectly to the 2005 engine. The electronic IMRC system uses the same mounting points as the 1997 vacuum dash pots. Lastly, once the screw and plugs are removed, my coolant sensors will thread right in. With the 2001 intake now clean, I turn my attention to the gaskets. Since the 2001 and 2005 are similar, I decided to use 2008 model year gaskets to take advantage of all possible revisions. It looks like they'll fit just fine. But I'm going to be careful with the installation. I'm measuring and marking the center of both the valley deck and intake. Now I'll set it on these lines, center a few bolts on both sides, and make a mark across the intake and cylinder head. I'll snug the bolts in sequence with multiple passes by hand first, while making sure all the marks stay aligned. I'll continue checking the marks as the bolts are final torqued. With the valve covers repainted and installed, I'll turn my attention to the oil pan. When I tried to swap in the 1997s, I ran across another problem. Apparently the main bearing caps were changed at some point, requiring a deeper pan. My 1997s is too shallow and won't bolt up to the 2005 engine. Since the 2005 oil pan is deeper, it may not clear the front differential on my truck, so I bolted it to the transmission, calculated the install position using the motor mounts, and fortunately, there'll be plenty of clearance. Finally, I can install the accessories to the engine. But wait, we have another problem. The 1997 knock sensor is piggybacked to the coolant drain plug on the right side of the block, and neither will fit the 2005 engine. After more research, I learned the knock sensor was changed and relocated to the back of the left cylinder head in 1999. There are two solutions to this problem. One is to drill and tap this boss to accept the 1997 knock sensor. This sounds like the solution until one learns the sensor was changed due to problems in service. The option I'm choosing is to obtain the newer knock sensor and relocate it. I cut off the original knock sensor's plug, opened the wiring harness in 4 places, and extracted the knock sensor wires through each opening, threading them back through the harness. This is to make sure only the correct wires get relocated. Once they're at the new exit point on the harness, I'll install the late model plug wire to wire and crimp them together. Once the splices are covered, I'll add a piece of piping, tape everything up with electrical tape, and secure the plug to the harness with some zip ties. So after hours of ups and downs, research and wrench time, the 1997 accessories are all installed on the 2005 engine. Did you notice the 2005 exhaust manifolds are still installed? After changing out the EGR pipe and widening the holes in the header flange, everything bolted up and the engine is back in the truck.
Well, all right, it's August of 2016. The engine's been in for about a year and a half. I've got about 7,000 miles on her. Let's fire it up, see how she runs.